Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming. We're going to do Oliver Lippman's story on the Battle of the Bulge. This was rescheduled, so we're really happy that we got a chance to do it again. And Oliver's really excited, so we'll go ahead and get started. And like Allison just said, at the end I can come around with questions. So without further ado, here we go.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, my outfit was the 106th Division Cannon Company, and we got on the line, relieving another infantry company on September the 12th. September the 13th, we were bombarded by the Germans with their multi-barreled cannons. We got into our positions on the 13th, and we were 3 platoons. The first platoon and the second platoon were on either side of the main road from St. Vid from to St. Vid. The main road from those two towns was then occupied by German Tiger tanks. Our companies were up on the line with carbines, which is not a good weapon against a tank. The German tanks came down the road and took out Platoon 1 and Platoon 2. I fortunately was in Platoon 3, which was several miles off of the road. We stayed in position while our other 2 platoons, which we thought were, and we didn't know what happened to. My lieutenant went to get to the headquarters, which was at Platoon 1, and he was killed on his voyage there. So the platoon sergeant was in charge of our platoon. We stayed in that position for several hours, and we finally decided that maybe we should get out of there. But we didn't, because we were relieved by C Company of the division. The C Company came up behind us. The lieutenant in charge of the company said, we're going to maintain this position for 3 hours. And so we did. And then so 4 of us went back to the position, and a couple of hours later, we noticed the Tiger tanks were lining up to come at us. So I went back to we had a dugout and trenches. I was in the dugout. I went back into the trenches and found that there was only 4 of us in the trenches. We went back, and there was a sergeant, 2 privates, and me. There was a corporal by act of Congress. The sergeant and I decided that we're not gonna fight tiger tanks with carbines. So I had a compass because I was a fire direction, and I had a compass. I said, we're in Germany, France is to the west of us, east of us, and let's go. So the four of us left the position and headed for France. That night, we decided that it was not wise to continue going at night because either side would attack us. So we lay down in the forest and went to sleep. We woke up the next morning and we were surprised to find out that we were almost covered with spent shrapnel because they were firing into the trees above us. And nobody was injured of the four of us. We just kept going. We kept going towards France and ran into an outfit of engineers that was mining a field, and they knew where our third platoon was bivouacked, and they piled us into jeeps and took us to our outfit. We found out then that we were the only outfit left of the cannon company. We had decided that we had been left up there as a suicide outfit for the simple reason that the sergeant pulled everybody else out and left us. And that irritated us a bit. Later, the sergeant was coming up for a battlefield commission, and we decided to speak up, and we squelched his battlefield commission. We didn't think he was officer material. So later that day, we had joined our platoon, and we went to where we had parked our howitzers. We had 6 of them, 2 for platoon. After a while, we were reorganized into the 3 platoons system, and with our weapons. At this time, we were with Hodges' First Army. We joined Patton's Third Army because he knew what to do with the cannon company. Hodges did not. They put us up as an auxiliary artillery outfit with our 6 howitzers. We were quite an addition, and we were given fire directions by the artillery officers, and we continued to fire and work as an auxiliary outfit to the artillery of the 3rd Army. During this time, we're in December, and we drove 20 miles Christmas Eve to get our turkey dinners. We had almost enough turkeys for 1 per man because of the fact that we were so weak in numbers. We drove to a farm some 20 miles from where we were bivouacked, and We took our turkeys and went into a barn and used the cows in the barn as tables. It wasn't the most humane situation, but we enjoyed it. After that, we worked with the artillery to reduce the bulge. And we fought, we interdicted roads. That means keep fire on the roads to prevent the enemy from using them. Occasionally, that led to difficulty because we didn't have good communications with the artillery. And one afternoon, a general of the 3-star variety came into our fire direction center and said that we had been holding up their attack all morning because we were interdicting the road they had to cross. That didn't sit too well with our working with the artillery. We continued to fight as an artillery, but we set up our own fire direction center, and we had our own form of observers to send back fire missions to the fire direction center. The sergeant was in charge of the fire direction center from noon to midnight, and I had it from midnight to noon. We worked that way for several months. And whenever we had need a new forward observer, it went to me to take care of. I had 4 missions over enemy lines. In the Piper Cup, which as few people know, or should know, is a very flimsy airplane. It's a fiber body plane that flies very slow, very low. And we could hear bullets going through it while we were in these missions. I served in 4 missions and was not allowed a 5th mission because that would have cost the Air Force an air medal, which they didn't want infantrymen to have. So none of the 5 forwarders ever got an air medal. We continued fighting constantly for several months. And with the help of Patton's army, we came and reduced the bulge to where it was. Some other information that came to us is that when the bulge started, our supply sergeant was in headquarters getting supplies when one of the generals there put a pin in the map and said this is as far as they could get, because they were going towards an ammunition dump in Antwerp. They made within 7 miles of that objective, but no further, because they ran out of gas. Their Tiger tanks were stymied with the lack of gasoline, which they intended to get at that supply dump, which they never made. And that's why that bulge really died right there. We continue to fight as Japan's army for a number of months until the war ended. When the war ended, the division was scheduled to go to Japan. But when it got to the States, it was disbanded. The 106th Division never ceased to exist. We're still an active group. We have 490 some veterans still living from the original 106, and it puts out a magazine every quarter, which I just got my latest issue. We have a division reunion every year since the war. For a long time, I and my wife attended these reunions. It's a very active group. We have people in Europe that belong to it, but we have a very large auxiliary group that's parents of the veterans and children of the veterans, and they're all members of the auxiliary, and they hold most of the offices at this time. While we still have some very active members, there aren't many of us left. I laughingly said it took an act of Congress to get me my corporal stripes, because Congress said that certain activities deserve certain stripes, and my designation was a corporal, and I ended up a corporal, and proud of it. Are there any questions? Yes.
How old were you when you were serving?
I had my 21st birthday in basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. They send us northern boys to the south.
How big is a platoon, and also as a man, as a person, how did you feel after you were in the war? And also, did you know what you were doing at the time? How much information did you have as a corporal fighting this situation?
We had as much information as possible with the restrictions on information going back to the States. I never knew what happened to the first two platoons until the first reunion that we held back in the States. And that was, they were captured, not killed. We never knew what happened to them until we met in the first reunion. And they came in droves. And it was like reading long lost brothers. Yeah, but it was exciting.
When they had D-Day, were you there?
What?
When they had D-Day, the fighting
I was still in Europe.
in Europe, okay. I mean, the European.
I was in the European theater. I was being scheduled to go to Japan.
but you were at the beach in
I was,
France?
I was still in France.
Yeah, okay.
And let me tell you, I was very disappointed not to go to Japan.
When did you head home? What year was it when you headed home?
1944.
44.
Tell us what the rations were like.
What?
Tell us what the food was like.
Well, actually, the food was very good. We had our own kitchen, and we were supplied very well. The prisoners weren't so lucky.
How accurate was the movie Battleground?
Very. It was very accurate.
Did you choose to be in the artillery?
No, I originally was in the medics, but when the cannon companies were formed as an infantry outfit, they took a number from each outfit to fill up the cannon company. And because of the lack of time for training, they took most of the people with higher Army scores, intelligence tests.
Now you were sharpshooter, man.
However, what we've always heard is that when the Germans attacked in the Bulge, that the troops were not fully clothed, they were just very poorly clothed for the cold weather.
Those that were captured were not fully, were not dressed properly. Those of us that got away with our clothes. We were well supplied. Those of us that continued to fight.
Okay.
But the ones that were prisoners, they suffered greatly.
Yeah, that's what I understood, yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Oliver. Oliver, I was wondering, a lot of us have always heard of this Battle of the Bulge, it's so famous, but what was the reason behind it being named that? I guess that's something I never knew.
The Battle of the Bulge was an attempt to get to the supply dumps in Antwerp. That was their destination. And they got their tanks within 7 miles of these, and then they stopped. That I've learned since then. But the general that put the pin in the map knew just what the capabilities of the Tiger tanks were.
It's amazing.
It was amazing. We were banking on it. Those of us that were still fighting.
Why did they use the term bulge? Was it a geographical?
It was a geographical bulge. They broke through our lines, and we stopped them long enough to take a lot of the fluid that they expected to use to get to the Antwerp. And the bulge, it was a bulge in the Allies' lines that gave the name the bulge.
I'd like to know which general put the pen in the map, and were the
I don't
Germans-
know the name of the general. He was one of the generals at headquarters.
Wasn't Patton or Hodge?
No,
Okay.
it was a lesser general.
And both the Germans and the Allies were trying to get to enter,
The Allies were in Antwerp.
but you couldn't connect. The ones in the field couldn't connect with them to get more fuel for the tanks.
No, the Germans had no line of supply. They needed to get to Antwerp and take over the big supply dump there. And they couldn't make it.
You guys kept them from getting there.
That's right.
Good, thank you.
And you mentioned, Oliver, that the Sherman tank was no match for the Tiger tank. Were
The
this-
American tanks were no match for the Tiger tank.
Were the 6 howitzers that you had, were the howitzers powerful enough to take out a Tiger tank?
They were 105 millimeter howitzer with armor piercing. We had a lot of armor piercing howitzer rounds. And yes, they were powerful enough to knock out a Tiger tank.
Thank you.
Oliver, how close did your unit get to the actual line of the Panzer tanks trying to get in?
The what?
How close was your unit with the artillery to the German line trying to get into Antwerp?
Oh, we were nowhere near Antwerp. We were still in France, in Germany.
How close were you to the German tanks?
Well, they overran our position after we left. They came to pick us up after they took the first 2 platoons. See, the 3rd platoon was approximately 3 miles away from where the first 2 platoons were. We had a 9-mile front.
Did you touch upon the fact that your job was, you had the compass and you were the instrument man and you were what that job entailed?
My job was to lay the guns and point them at the target and hit it when we could. I was the one that laid the guns and gave the firing missions.
How large is a platoon?
Well, the 2 platoons we lost was 5,000 men. So it's about 250. I'm not good at math anymore. Being 99 years old,
How many men in your group held off the Germans?
well, we didn't hold them off, we retreated.
But you stopped them for a while. How many men were doing that?
Not in no, 2 platoons we captured immediately. The 3rd platoon, which I was in, retreated.
And how many men were in the 3rd platoon?
Approximately half of 5,000 men.
Okay. And how many of those 2,500 men were brought home?
That's hard to say. We had, when we got home, each area that had men had made up a part of the reunions. And so I would say we would usually have maybe 1,500 at a reunion at the beginning, because a lot of them were not well off when they got home.
Anyone else?
being in that war? Were you just trying to live, or?
Well, once we got reorganized, got our howitzers, we fought for the rest of the time we were in the service. We didn't want to go home. We wanted to finish the Bulge. And we did.
Did you get to Germany?
Yes. Well, actually, some of us never left Germany. When we reorganized, we stayed in Germany. We joined the Patent Army, which was on the other side, the northern side of the Bulge, and we reduced Bulge. We never really left Germany.
Okay.
Never made it back to France.
Anyone else? Yep.
Oliver, I'd just like to say, thank you for your service, sir. God bless you.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right, well, you can.
Thank you guys all for coming and supporting Oliver. Thank you, Oliver, for giving us that presentation. You all are free to go. Get you on the clip.